Welcome to 7 disability-related questions for navigating the job search and workplace. I'm Dina Berggren, manager of Walden University's Career Planning and Development Department. And during this video, you will also hear from Carolyn Roney, former Director of Disability Services and current Senior Manager in the Office of Student Affairs at Walden University. This video has been adapted from the webinar Disabilities to Abilities, Turning Challenges into Career Success, that was originally delivered live and recorded in 2015. Let's get started by taking a look at the 7 questions we will cover during the program. The 7 tough questions are: when should I disclose? What if I encounter accessibility issues or need accommodations during the interview? How do I address the elephant in the room during interviews? How can I best demonstrate my abilities? When should I disclose my invisible disability if it does not affect the interview? How do I explain my employment gaps? And what if I need on-the-job accommodations? Let's start with the first question. When should I disclose? In today's competitive job market, you often get only one chance to make a positive first impression. How do you best prepare yourself, and when should you disclose? Is the correct answer you are not required to disclose your disability? Or delay disclosure as long as possible unless it works to your advantage? Or is it don't disclose on applications unless it affects the job? Or any of the above? The correct answer is any of the above. And this is because the purpose of your application is to get you to the next step of the job search process, which is the interview. We generally recommend not to disclose on the resume, cover letter, or application unless it is to your benefit. For instance, if you are targeting a disability-friendly employer like the VA hospital, you may want to disclose on your application. Otherwise, we suggest that you do not disclose. But keeping that in mind, when to disclose also depends on your individual situation. Carolyn, let's say a person uses a wheelchair full-time and wants to avoid a surprise at the time of an interview by giving the employer a heads up. Should the person disclose on their cover letter or resume? What would be the best approach?
Sorry, no, they shouldn't. They shouldn't disclose on their cover letter or resume. The best approach is, first of all, to do your own homework and know where the interview is going to be, what the site looks like. Maybe go there if it's open to the public. Look around, see where the elevators are. All of those things. Do some research up front, and then at the time of the interview, if there's any concerns, you'll want to say when you're making the appointment for the interview over the phone, I do use a wheelchair. I've been to your site. I've looked around. I know I'll be able to get to your meeting room with the elevators that they're there. It's a very accessible building, whatever. I just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up in case the room itself might be crowded or something. We might need to move to a different room. Show that you're in control. You've done your research. This is an opportunity even at that phone, setting up the appointment for the interview. Even if you're not talking to the boss, you're still presenting yourself as a professional who can manage the disability and has done the research necessary to make it work. But as far as when to disclose, I think it's appropriate at that time when you're preparing for the interview, especially if you have noted there is an accessibility problem when you've gone to visit the place and there's no elevator or there's no way to get into the building. Then you are going to want to call, and again, you're going to want to say, this shouldn't be an issue. We can meet somewhere else. I'll be happy to meet you here or there where it is accessible, something like that. So hopefully you're not going to run into an inaccessible spot, but just another opportunity to demonstrate your professionalism and management.
Great, Carolyn. So it sounds like you're really advising to come up with solutions and workable solutions for employers. And
Present options, yes.
absolutely,
More than one if you can.
that is very, very important advice. And let's say a person has an invisible disability, like maybe a brain injury or a mild form of autism, and it may show up in minor ways during the interview. Should this person mention this on his or her resume or cover letter? What would be the best approach?
Again, I don't think it's ever appropriate to put it on the resume or cover letter. And if it's invisible, I don't think that in that case you really do have to kind of play it by ear. Everybody's different. If you're pretty sure it's going to show up in the interview, certain mannerisms or delays in speech or something like that that are caused by the disability, and you've had enough experience where you know this is going to be noticeable, then yes, you should have a prepared 2-sentence explanation. You might notice I struggle with this minor communication glitch, whatever it is, use a professional term, but I can manage it this way or that way, or you want to practice that, work with professionals or your own career, call somebody here at Walden's Career Services to go over sort of a quick 2-sentence explanation and another opportunity to kind of take charge and show that you can handle it. But if it's not going to show up, except in rare situations, I wouldn't mention it at all. It's best not to disclose unless you have to.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. And the next common question is, what if I encounter accessibility issues or need accommodations during the interview? And according to the ADA, an employer is required to provide reasonable accommodations for the job interview unless they cause undue hardships or are, in other words, too difficult or too expensive. So reasonable accommodations may include providing materials in accessible formats, providing readers and sign language interpreters, ensuring interviews are held in accessible locations, adjusting application policies or procedures, and many others. So generally, our advice would be is to, number one, prepare the recruiter so there are no issues before or during the interview, and number two, offer low-cost solutions. So Carolyn, what advice would you give a person who is in a wheelchair and may have difficulties entering the building where an interview is scheduled to be held?
Well, like I said, if you've done your research and you found out the building was inaccessible or the room was somehow inaccessible, address that before the interview. Don't let it be a surprise at the time. Call up and say, this is what I've discovered, and so here are some options. This has happened to me before, and I am totally capable of handling this. Let me show you how well. So you present it like that, and not accusing people. This is not accessible, and you can get in trouble with the law. That's not what you want to talk about to a potential employer. You want to just show that you've got this under control. You can manage it. You may want to address it at a future time, but for the interview, when this is your opportunity to sell yourself, you want to say, here are some options. I'll be happy to meet you somewhere else in another building, or I think the building itself is accessible, but this particular room seems to be the challenge. Is there another room, a conference room, that we could reserve to meet, that kind of thing?
Wonderful. And what advice would you give someone who is deaf and has recently received an invitation to interview for a job and is not sure how to ensure that a sign language interpreter is available for the interview?
Yeah, now you're talking about somebody having to spend money. And so it can change, the things can change a little bit when somebody has to spend money. And like you said, you do have to be assertive. It is the employer's responsibility to hire an interpreter for a job interview. And so my first recommendation would be to call up the employer through a relay service or an interpreter and say, we have an appointment scheduled, an interview scheduled. I do use a sign language interpreter for communication, and so I wanted to make sure we can make those arrangements. Here is the phone number to call, the referral service to get the sign. Be prepared to educate the employer in a friendly way. Explain this is, assume they know this is their responsibility, and just provide the resources. I have a friend who is a sign language interpreter who would be happy to work for a minimal fee or whatever. You want to provide the resources so that the employer knows you're on top of the issue and can manage your disability. It might even be an opportunity to say, once I'm on the job, I really won't need a sign language interpreter except for maybe the monthly training meetings or something like that. So it'll be good for us to have this experience of hiring an interpreter service for this kind of thing, and here's the typical rate. You can provide that kind of information, but let them know in some way that it's their responsibility. If they don't accept that responsibility, again, you don't want to start threatening litigation and that kind of thing. If you want that job, well, first of all, if they don't take that responsibility, then maybe you don't want that job. But if you want that job and you feel like there's an opportunity to educate them into changing their mind about this, then you could pay for it yourself and address it at a if you got the job, then address the need for an interpreter at a later date as far as who pays for it. So there's a couple different ways to handle it, but you should practice beforehand having your presentation of the disability management strategy, in this case using a sign language interpreter, and have the resources at your fingertips where you can refer the employer to that. Just another opportunity to show that you can manage the situation.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. And then what happens if you enter a room and you sense that your interviewers are somehow uncomfortable, like there is an elephant in the room? You may have experienced this situation before. Your interviewers may have conscious or unconscious emotions because of your disability, and they may include curiosity or guilt or prejudice or ignorance or others. Your goal is to put your interviewer at ease and prove that you're the best person for the job. To do this, I suggest using a friendly, matter-of-fact approach to briefly address your disability and then move on to other topics. Here's an example. Before we get started, you may notice that I have no movement in my left arm. My arm has been like this since birth, but I have compensated with my right arm. I've had more practice problem solving than other people. Now let me tell you more about myself, and then move on to discussing your abilities to perform the job. And now to our next question. How can you best demonstrate your abilities? Here are a few ideas. Ask to give a demonstration of how you can complete aspects of the job. And if this is impractical, share an experience or example from your last job that describes how you were able to complete the tasks. Anticipate anything in the job description the interviewer may be worried about, such as physical mobility, safety, and motor coordination. And explain to them how you've adapted in these areas or will overcome these obstacles. Remember, your role is to educate the employer on how you're the best person for the job and are able to perform the essential job functions. And also utilize references who can testify on your ability to do the job. Previous teachers, counselors, employers, supervisors, and others, and create a career portfolio and use it to showcase your work samples. If your ability is not visible and you will not affect the interview, our general advice is to disclose, number one, after receiving an offer, and number two, only if it will affect the job. So, however, there are many variables, and if you truly believe your disability may impact your performance on the job, You want to take control, address the problem, and offer solutions before performance is affected. Carolyn, do you have any additional comments regarding this question?
Well, I just want to emphasize how important it is to not let something go until it becomes a performance issue on the job. Because what I've seen happen many times is people will have performance issues that are really disability related, not related to their skills and knowledge or their ability to do the work. For maybe they have a lot of absences because their dialysis schedule changed or something, and they're having to miss a lot of days at work or something, something disability related that's impacting their performance markers like attendance or just typically it's attendance or just communicating on the job, those kinds of things. You don't want to wait until it's a problem and then say, oh, it's disability related, because that looks to many employers like a cop-out. Acknowledge it. Talk to your supervisor. You'll notice that I'm having struggles with attendance lately, or you'll notice that I'm not getting along with my coworkers as well as I used to, or that I'm having some conflicts. Whatever they are, whatever the performance issue is, have a private conversation with your supervisor or an HR representative and say, this is disability related, and so I probably need to go through the process of requesting an accommodation so that we can work out a solution, and I don't end up and you don't have a bad impression of me as someone who's not performing appropriately. So take control again, show that you can manage the disability, do it before it becomes a performance issue, have some ideas for how the issue can be accommodated. Not just one idea, because the employer doesn't have to choose your preferred idea. They just have to prefer to use an effective idea. So have some options that you can live with to present, and go from there, because you don't want it to be a situation where you're disciplined for something that really was disability related.
Thank you, Carolyn. And what if you have employment gaps on your resume? Maybe you were out of the workplace because of your disability. How do you explain these gaps? We suggest offering a very brief explanation of how you've overcome your challenges. However, you don't want to share details about what happened or your diagnosis. Instead, focus on how you're capable and ready to excel in this position. Provide specific examples of how you will add value to the employer. So here's an example. I had a medical issue that took me out of the workforce for a couple of years. This issue has now been resolved, and I learned a lot about resiliency and endurance during this time. I'm now fully ready to get back into the workforce and contribute 100% to this role. Let me tell you a little about what I can do. What if I need on-the-job accommodations? According to the ADA, to be qualified for the position, you have to be able to perform the essential job functions. Do your preparation ahead of time and consider what you'll need to successfully complete the job. Put the employee at ease and offer specific low-cost solutions. According to a study by the Job Accommodation Network, most accommodations cost under $500, and many require no cost at all. Assure your employer that you'll need minimum additional supervision on the job. And Carolyn, could you tell a quick story about this?
The one that comes to mind is that there's a classic story about an employer who really had an employee in a wheelchair, and really wanted this employee and wanted to make the site accessible and overly accommodated. The bathrooms weren't accessible or something, so they tore down the bathroom and put in a whole new setup or whatever. And really, the only thing the person needed was a rope on the handle of the bathroom door. if there was a little rope with a knot in it tied to the handle of the bathroom door, he could have easily gone in and out of the bathroom without any trouble. So it's important to talk to an employer. Educate you as the person with the disability have a responsibility for knowing what the options are, what accommodations will work, and and try to think of the ones that are going to have the least impact to your employer. You know, the cheapest ones. They're typically the best ones, and so present those so your disability isn't negatively impacting your performance. You can set yourself up for success by showing that you know how to resolve these problems in a minimal invasive way.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn.
And as a reminder, to learn more about disclosure and accommodations, check out the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, and the EEOC, which is the U.S. Equal Employment and Americans with Disabilities Act website. They have a list of questions and answers related to disclosure and accommodations. To sum up, you want to take a very proactive approach to your career management for career success. And also continue to build your confidence answering disability-related questions that may come up during the job search or in the workplace. For more information, we invite you to visit the Career Planning and Development website at careercenter.waldenu.edu. We have a wide range of resources and offerings to help you succeed in the job search and workplace. And also refer to the Office of Student Disability Services at Walden, as they have great information on accommodations and services that are available to Walden students. We want to thank you for watching this video, and we look forward to helping you reach your professional and career goals.